In pandas, in earlier videos, earlier I would say lectures, we discussed about generating the numbers using different techniques. Many techniques we have used and different ways of generating numbers, this that we have seen. But when it comes to real-time working, what happens? How are we going to generate our own numbers and work on it? It doesn't make any sense because we are going to work for a client and client will give the data, right? Obviously. So client will give the data and we have to take that data. And the data will not be in the form of what? It is not always in the one format. So he may ask us to fetch the data from the database. He may ask us to fetch the data from some server or some website, or he will give some Excel file, or he will give some CSV file, which we discussed, comma separated values, or he will give some links, that HTML file, JSON file. There are different file formats, different data formats, or I would say different sources we have. So in that case, how are we going to fetch the data? And once we fetch, how are we going to put it in the in our console, or how are we going to frame this? Are we going to store in the database? If the data itself is in the database, then why should we again insert into new database? So what are all the ways? Once we fetch the data, or once we access the data from any source, we have to work on it, right? Accessing a data is very first task. Once we access it, done, that's all. After that, we have to start working on it. Maybe client will ask us to do some kind of a operation on the data. So how are we going to achieve all these operations? How are we going to manipulate the data? How are you going to deal the millions of data which client is going to give us? In the NumPy, we have seen the numbers, we have seen the matrix, but it is not a full-fledged, I would say, the format, because in the NumPy, we dealt with only numbers. But in real time, we don't get only numbers, we do get texts, we do get strings, objects, like a location, Bangalore, Noida, Delhi. Suppose I want to predict or I want to estimate or anything, either sales or the salary. So in that case, salary will be depending upon different criteria. Your technology matters, your place matters, tier 1 city, tier 2 city, tier 3 city. If you are in a metro city, your salary will be more. If you are in tier 3 city, your salary will be less. The experience, which level. So these levels are what? Levels are in terms of what? Strings. Junior engineer, software engineer, senior software engineer, team lead, manager. So they are in the form of string. A location is in the form of string. Bangalore, Noida, Delhi, Kolkata, Hyderabad. So this kind of data also we will receive, other than numbers, age, experience, date of birth, they are all in terms of numbers. But when I am receiving mixed data type of the data from the client, how are we going to deal with that? That's where this pandas will comes into picture. Pandas will help us to fetch the data from different sources. Pandas will help us to manipulate the data. Pandas will help us to deal any type of a data in the file. And it has its own structure. We are going to fetch the data and put it in one very nice structure, which will give a wonderful, I would say, beautiful structure. Right? So all those things we are going to deal in the pandas.